Mieke Boynton is a specialist landscape and aerial photographer from Bright in the Alpine valleys of northeast Victoria. She and her partner, Matt Palmer, opened their Alpine Light photographic art gallery in her hometown in December 21. Mieke was the first Australian and first female to win the prestigious Epson International Pano Awards in 2019, and that same year she was also named Victorian Landscape Photographer of the Year. Mieke is a Grand Master with the Australian Photographic Society and last year received her Masters with distinction from the New Zealand Institute of Professional Photography. She was also named 2021 NZIPP International Photographer of the Year and 2022 NZIPP Australian Landscape Photographer of the Year. She is also a winner of the Maitre de la Fédération Internationale de l'Art Photographique distinction with FIAP, the International Federation of Art Photography. We talk about her experiences in aerial photography, the opening of her gallery with her partner, and her journey to that point via the Kimberley, along with a whole lot more. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Mieke. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you going?
I'm very well. Thank you, Grant. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Absolute pleasure. You've been on my list for a little while and, finally managed to track you down and get you to say yes, which is very nice. I really appreciate it and appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Why don't we start out a little bit with who you are, where you are in your landscape photography journey?
Okay. So I live in Bright in northeast Victoria and I kind of grew up here. We moved here when I was 8 and then I went to boarding school when I was 15. So the most important years of your life, I reckon, when you're going to primary school and high school, early high school, I grew up here. So essentially I've come back home, which is awesome. Nice. But in the meantime, I've travelled a lot, been lots of places. I guess the photography bit, if you want to know about that, I started because I moved to the Kimberley region of Western Australia. I'd been a teacher for 4.5 years and decided that I needed a little bit of something different. And so I decided to teach grade 5 and 6 up in the Kimberley, up in a little town at the end of a long road called Wyndham.
Wow, yeah.
And I arrived in the wet season and the colours were just like nothing I'd ever seen before. And all I wanted to do, this is how it started, was I just wanted to show my family and friends back home how stunning the Kimberley was. And by the end of that year, I inflicted a CD of all my images on everyone that I was close to. And it was just with a little point and shoot camera, like it was nothing good. It was pretty bad. But, it was just a really inspiring place. And I just found myself throughout that year spending more and more time out on the mud flats, looking for boab trees, trying to be somewhere where the light was happening. And that's what really got me into it. But yeah, now I've come back. So I spent almost 10 years in the Kimberley. Now I've come back to Bright and my partner, Matt Palmer, and I have opened a gallery.
Fantastic. Very different landscape, though, Bright from the Kimberley. Kimberley, lots of those sort of the red earth and ochre sort of colours in the land and in the landscape. Very vibrant greens, blues and aquas, and I've been to Broome myself, and I remember flying in there. Just the colours blew me away looking out the plane window.
Yeah, I think I was really lucky to live in Wyndham, which is the East Kimberley, and then move across to the West Kimberley. So I lived in Derby for 2.5 years, and then I lived in Broome for 5 years. And I think that gave me it's so funny, actually. I'll sidetrack a little bit. If you set up a market stall in Melbourne and tried to sell photos of Sydney, people would be like, what are you on about? But in the Kimberley, you can have a stall in Broome and sell photos of Kununurra, which is the same distance, and it's still the Kimberley. Like, that's how vast the Kimberley is. It is just gigantic. So yeah, you do get caught up a little bit in talking about the Kimberley as a, homogenous kind of place, but it's not. It's, there's particularly coastal versus inland. And I think the beautiful thing about learning photography there was that there's such a huge Aboriginal presence in the Kimberley, and it just makes you so aware of the spirituality of places. And that's one thing that I'm just forever grateful for, is that when I go anywhere, my first thought is, does this have a feeling? Does this have like something that's more than just what I'm seeing? Am I feeling something? And I'm forever grateful to the Kimberley for that, because I don't think it would have happened anywhere else, that kind of, desire to connect with country in that way. But because I worked, so after the year teaching, it was 14 Indigenous kids, grade 5 and 6. I then requalified as a librarian, and I was the specialist librarian for the Kimberley Land Council.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got, I had some amazing opportunities to go out bush with people and just see the way that they viewed the land. And it stuck with me forever. And coming back here to Bright, which, is literally the other side of the country, like as far from the Kimberley as you can go, pretty much.
Further away from the Kimberley than Bright.
Yeah. Well, apart from Tassie, yeah. So, yeah. But there's a mountain here that I have always loved. It's called Mount Buffalo.
Yeah.
And I get the same sense of presence from Mount Buffalo that I did in special places in the Kimberley. And I've been doing a little bit of research recently about the people who lived at Mount Buffalo. And it has been a place of ceremony and the meeting of people for, tens of thousands of years. And I just think there are places in the world that, I'm getting a little bit deep too early, aren't I? But there are places that you can go that you just feel like it's special. It's more than just what you're seeing. There's more, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people, particularly, European or people with European background, don't really necessarily understand that just about every rocky outcrop or mountain or even some of the minor hills, I know just up the road from me, there's a very small grove of trees which, on first glance wouldn't have any significance to anyone driving past. It's literally in the middle of sort of grassy parkland, but it's special to the Aboriginal people of the local area because of whatever the spiritual meaning for that place is. And, each of these places, I think, has its own feeling, and it as you say, it has a spirituality in amongst it.
Yeah, and I think when you're aware of that, like when you go and photograph and you have that awareness, and it's just part of, the interaction that you have with nature, there's a respect there and there's an openness there that I think results in a much more positive experience. And, there are actually places I've been that I've felt threatened by. There was a boab tree. In the wet season, my good friend Tanya Malkin and I, we did a wet season photo trip. Oh my God, it was 40 plus degrees every day. The humidity was disgusting. From like first thing getting up in the morning, you were already sweating.
Yeah.
We were inundated by mosquitoes. Like we had to put Bushman's or the DEET all over everything. And at one point in time, I was sweating on my face and I wiped my face and I got it in my mouth. It was, it's poison. It's totally poison, but it's the only way to keep the mozzies away. But anyway, we were just driving along and looking, because there was no one there. Like it was just us. So we were just driving slowly along the highway and just looking for, spots where we might set up and take some photos, because the sky is amazing. The clouds are just, whenever there's storm clouds up there, it's just fantastic. And the grass is just fluorescent green. It's just amazing. Anyway, we saw a place where there was some pools of water and we were like, awesome, we might be able to get some reflections. There was a big boab tree. Anyway, we kind of were moving along, staying out of each other's shots, and then we noticed this big boab tree and it had almost like an eye on it. And I just got the heebie-jeebies.
Wow, okay.
Really, really strongly. And I said, I avoided it. And then Tanya caught up with me and I was like, I really don't feel safe with that boab tree. She's like, no, I feel it too. She's like, I don't think we should be here. I'm like, okay, let's go. And it was that strong. So yeah, like it's not all touchy-feely positive stuff. You can also, but even nature, like I was out photographing a huge lightning storm in Broome once. And there was lightning going off in 3 directions, and I was awesome. Like the air was tingly. It was so intense. And there was, I was setting up in, so the beaches near Broome tend to have really shallow, gradual descent into the ocean. So when there's high tide and then it goes out, you just have these reflections forever, and you feel like you're walking in the sky. Like it's that amazing. Anyway, I went down to photograph this lightning, and I set up in the water, so that I could get the reflections when the tide was out. And my dog Banjo was getting really upset at me. He was banging the back of my legs, like, we shouldn't be here, let's go. And I was like, we're fine, we're safe. Then the wind changed, and I was like, okay, I don't feel safe now. So I packed up and went. Right. And then it wasn't that long afterwards that there was that guy walking the ridge of Kings Canyon, and he got zapped by lightning and he passed. Yeah. You know what? I was really in the danger zone, genuinely. And my dog knew it. I did not. But, lightning can travel something like 20 kilometers or something like that. Like if you can see it. And
that's it. Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes nature tells you things aren't safe too. Like when the wind changed, I was like, okay, I've got to go here. I don't feel good about this.
Absolutely. You started photography up in the Kimberley and sending photos home, and that's kind of why you got started. Why keep doing it? What's in it for you, and what do you get out of it?
Well, I think like a lot of landscape photographers, it's the experience of going out with a camera. I always take my tripod because I find that it slows me down.
Yep.
It's that ability to switch your head off from all of the busyness that we all experience most of the time, and just be present, to listen to what's happening in nature, to experience what's happening, to take in what's on offer. And I don't get that any other way. When I discovered photography, because it was kind of a discovery, I guess, for me, I'd loved art all my life. Mm-hmm. I was actually okay at it, but I never was going to be a professional artist. I was, like a painting would take me 8 hours if I worked solidly, that I was never going to, yeah. But with photography, it was all the same stuff that I loved, but it was much more immediate and it just had that specialness about it, that you could go out in nature and communicate with nature. And I know, like, already this interview, I feel a bit embarrassed because some people are just going to sit there and go like, you are nuts, you're bonkers, like you're a little bit maybe sideways, I don't know. But I just feel like sometimes when you go out, particularly, I love photographing by myself, except for with Matt. Yep. One notable exception, but it's just that ability to block out everything else and just take it all in.
Yeah, just concentrate on the one thing. Yeah.
And just notice. And I think, for me, it's an outward thing. Like my brain turns off, but I actually think out.
Right.
Rather than it being a tunnel vision thing. Like I'm hyper aware of the smells, the sounds, the light, the colors, it's just that immersive experience. And that's why I keep doing it, because
that's fantastic.
Yeah. Anyway, yes, that's it.
So in terms of what you're chasing, what would that be? How would you describe what you're chasing? Is it always that feeling, or is it something more in terms of turning it from the experiential side of it, being out in the field and enjoying that time in nature, to turning that into something creative and something artistic?
That's a really good question. I think, it's obviously you could just go out and bushwalk and be in nature, and that seems to tick the boxes of what I'm just talking about.
Many people do just that.
Yeah, but I think for me, it is the artistic challenge of capturing what I'm seeing and experiencing and sharing that with others. So I don't really enjoy processing, to be perfectly honest. I find it a bit tedious. It's a job for me. But once that's achieved and I'm looking at a photo that is what I want to communicate to represent what my experience was, then I get excited again.
Right.
So, I've got lots and lots of photographs on my hard drives from shoots that I've never processed because the processing part is such a drag for me. But, photos don't go off. They don't expire. I used to think they did. And I once actually asked on Instagram, does it matter to you whether a photo was taken last week, today, or 5 years ago if I've never posted it before? And I was expecting people to say, yeah, we kind of want to experience what you're doing at the moment. That was my impression, that everyone wanted that instantaneous, this is what is going on right now. And everybody resoundingly said, no, they don't care whether it was taken, today or...
Yeah.
And I was so surprised. And it just it gave me permission, I guess, to spend more time on the photos. Because when I was living in the Kimberley, I took lots of photos, but I never had time to process because I was working full time. So I've got years of photos on my hard drives that I haven't had time to process.
Cool. I'm very much the same. In terms of doing that, though, I'm going to bring some of the questions that I sometimes leave to later a bit forward now. Is that something, when you have sort of finished the shoot and you get home, are you straight in to take a look at it, or do you just sort of back it up, make sure it's secured, and then leave it and not worry too much about it and go and do something else with your time?
Because I know how it happened. It's because when I lived in the Kimberley, I was actually essentially working 7 days a week. I was managing the library services for TAFE. So this was when I was in Broome. That was when I became like a proper photographer.
Right.
So I was managing the library services for TAFE, and I was going out and taking photos whenever I could. But I also had a market stall every Saturday in Broome that was very busy. So I was needing to actually produce prints and order things. So I had like acrylic blocks and stuff like that. So I was always ordering, packaging, repackaging, making bookmarks, all that kind of stuff in my evenings. And so I was very busy all the time. And when I could, I would take chunks of time off from work. I had a very understanding boss, and I'd take 2 weeks off at a time. I'd put all my leave together, take 2 weeks off and go somewhere. But what that meant was when I came back, all my life stuff continued, and I just never had time to process. So as a consequence, even now, I do exactly what the latter was. I come and I put the photos on my hard drive and back it up so that I've got them. But then I've got so many photos, so it's like, well, today I feel like processing what I did yesterday, but that tomorrow I might process my photos from Morocco, and the next day I might process some photos from the lightning storm in the Kimberley, or the next time I might process photos from Patagonia. And I've got Iceland. Oh my God, I haven't even scratched the surface of the photos that I took in Iceland in 2018. Yeah. How about you? Do you?
No, I'm kind of the opposite. I'm into it soon as I can get it onto a computer. It's really interesting. When I go overseas, for example, I don't carry a laptop around with me. I do have an iPad that I occasionally flick some of them up so that I can see them in a larger format than just on the phone or on the back of the camera. But yeah, I'm just desperately hoping the cards survive the trip home, because usually there's half a dozen cards. So I came back from the UK in July after 8 weeks over there, and I think I had about a card a week.
No, I'm the same actually. I don't process at all when I'm
And so when I got home, it was like, I've got to get into these now and take a look, see what they really look like on a large screen. But even if I go out for a sunrise shoot here in Sydney, that later that morning, I'll be sitting at the computer.
Wow.
Scrolling through, checking them out. Okay, that's the one I knew. The one that I knew I nailed when.
Wow. So look, Matt.
Work on it. Yeah.
Matt has taught me a lot about myself. Can I just tell you who Matt is? So Matt Palmer is my partner. He's I met him during COVID. Well, we actually had met each other previously, but we hadn't had a chance to talk to each other. And then during COVID, we ended up in an 11-hour Zoom chat, and we just knew that was it. And he came to Bright from Tas in the middle of COVID, arrived, and it was like, well, this is going to really work, or otherwise it's going to be an absolute disaster, because we had to quarantine in my house. Anyway, he's an absolute legend. He was the Australian Photographer of the Year in 2018. Yep. He's an amazing landscape photographer, and I never thought that I could be with another landscape photographer because I'm very competitive. But because he sees the world so differently to me, we can be in the same place and come home, swap cameras, and be amazed at the photographs that each other have taken.
How did you see that?
Yeah, we just see differently. And it's a joy to photograph together because we both like our own space. We don't hassle each other. We barely even talk. And it's just beautiful to share that. And I just feel so lucky. But anyway, I'm sidetracking a little bit. But the thing is Matt is just like you. He comes home.
Got to be into it.
Cards in. He's processing already. He's looking, like going through his Lightroom. He's deleting his, and I haven't even, like I'm catching up on emails because like my priority is I got to make sure that things are sorted because I've been away or whatever. And I'll look over there and he's already processing, and I'm just like, whoa, that's amazing. But it's because his background is completely different to mine. He did music photography and sport photography. He had to he had to turn it around. He had to get to them by the next day. Mm. So I think the way that we come into photography has a huge impact on how we
definitely, yeah. How you've learnt not just the process, but how you've learnt to work in the field. Whether that's self-teaching, formal teaching, or not. The one thing that I've learnt from talking to quite a few photographers here on the podcast is that everyone has their own approach. And they're in different places in their journey as well. And that always, you can see how they develop over time and see how they change their habits or change what they do, change their workflows and so forth. And I think the fact, and this is why I love doing the podcast, is just the fact that everybody has a different little tale to tell about how they got where they are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think the good thing of being with someone like Matt is because he gets through his photos so quickly that he's always on the ready for the next shoot. Yep. Whereas for me, I took pretty much the whole of 2018 off when I finished in the Kimberley and moved here, and I just took photos all year. I traveled and I took and honestly, if I didn't take another photo for the next 12 months, I'd still be processing. So I've got plenty in the bag, you know what I mean? Like there's no push for me to go and take new photos. But it's nice to have, like, I'm very aware that Matt needs new photos a lot more regularly than me because he's processed all his old stuff. So that's quite nice.
I definitely haven't processed all because apart from, the out of focus or the ones where I've bumped the tripod and I've got unintentional camera movement. Aside from those, I don't delete anything, so everything is still there. I just keep buying more hard disk space.
Yeah, yeah.
Which becomes expensive. But I've still got stuff dating back to 2014, raw files from 2014, 2013, and so forth that I still go back and take a look at now and then. I don't think the quality is as good as it is now because I've had years to sort of work on it and change it, but there's still things now that I would process differently to how I would process back then.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and I think going back into your archive and doing that is a really good exercise, not only in showing you how far you've come from where you were years ago to where you are now, but also in adapting some of those older images into something that could be something completely new because your techniques around processing have changed or improved. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the one limiting factor there, though, is your equipment. So,
definitely.
A lot of people come into the gallery and, they'll ask about cameras. And I think, like we were talking a little bit earlier, I think the most difficult thing when you're starting out with photography is getting your head around the settings. Because once you don't have to think about the settings, then you can enjoy all the wonderful things about being a landscape photographer. But until you can get your head around the settings, that is the difficult part. But I think when you're starting out, it's better to have a simpler camera.
Oh, definitely.
But the problem is now if I go back to the photos that I took in the beginning, the compositions are still great. Like I actually did have an eye for composition, but the quality of the files is just abominable. You put it in Photoshop, you hit, auto curves and it just falls apart. Like you can really see the difference. The cameras that I use today, the Nikon D810 and the Z7, are 36 and 45 megapixels, and the little D60 that I had is just.
And this thing, once you get used to using those higher megapixel cameras and so forth, it's very difficult to look at images on lesser sensors because
because
I'm used to this crystal clear quality.
Yes, that's right. And if you just push it a little bit, often you'll get banding and all that kind of stuff that you just don't have to even think about with the higher resolution images because there's more, so many more pixels to massage. So not that I do heaps of manipulation to my photos, but you certainly, particularly when I first started out, there were a lot of underexposed shots and a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I get what you mean. So you mentioned that you've always sort of had that eye for composition. Where did you start to be conscious of it being something more creative than just saying, okay, well, I'm lining up this nice scene. That's a pretty scene, and I'll make sure I include that hill or mountain or all of the branches of the tree. I'm not cutting the top of the tree off or the bottom of the tree or whatever, And you stopped thinking about some of those things and you started thinking, okay, well, how do I make this look a little bit unique and a little bit different?
I think, firstly, I want to say I think I was really lucky with the art teachers that I had because they taught me art theory and art history, and I always was interested in other people's art.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when you have amazing teachers, the information sticks. And so, I've always had that sensitivity. So, right from the beginning, moving to the Kimberley, I was trying to take photos that were making the most of having a camera. So, distortion. I had a 10 to 20 Sigma lens, I think year 2. So I started with a little Kodak EasyShare, and then my parents bought me a D60 for my 30th birthday, and then I got the 10 to 20 Sigma, and I loved how it distorted everything. I loved how you could make things look different. Even my processing in the beginning, like I loved tonal contrast because it looked different. Now I look back at those photos and I just cry. Oh my God!
We all cringe at our early work. It's part of the learning curve.
It is part of the learning curve, but I think the good thing is now I understand what I love about photography, and that is that I love to showcase nature. So I'm never really I'm not consciously trying to put a Mieke Boynton stamp on anything.
Sure.
I'm just hopeful and hoping that nature will provide something special that I can then capture and share. And that's not just saying it, that's legit. Like if it's a really rotten day and the weather's crap and and I know that I'd have to do a lot of work to make it look any good, I'd prefer not to take the photos, because then it becomes more about the artistic side of things rather than the nature side of things. And for me, it's the nature side of things that's more important.
Yeah. Right.
And it's not, my favorite photographers are actually, apart from Matt, he is my favorite photographer, but my favorite photographers are actually photographers who are much more on the artistic side of things. So It's not that I don't appreciate that. It's just, for me, it's honoring the experience that I had, because that's the most important thing for me, is the experience. The photos are the secondary output. Having said that, if I couldn't share my work, I think I wouldn't be as excited about photography, because I do love sharing my work. And, I know in a lot of your podcasts, you talk a fair bit about social media. And the one positive thing for me is that, there's some, I'd say mostly older people who don't get to the opportunity to go out and explore nature very much. And
Absolutely.
Through social media, that I often get comments about how much joy seeing these places brings to them. And I love the fact that I'm not creating something for them. I'm capturing something that I'm sharing with them.
Yeah, I'd love it when you get a comment, say from somebody that lived in a place or near a place that you've shot, and you've brought back a memory for them, and they've commented about that fact. And for me, I just love it when people go, oh, that really triggered a memory for me, which is, I think, and for me, that's really what photography is all about. It's about triggering emotions in people. And, some of them might be revulsion, don't want to see that, all the way to, I'm absolutely in love with it, I've got to go and buy a print from Grant or Mieke.
Yeah, I'm sure you get more of the latter than the former. But yeah, totally. Like, we had people come into the gallery yesterday, 2 ladies, and they were really interested in my aerials. And they admitted that they're not really into photography. Yeah. But they love the aerials because of the artistry of it. And it was like seeing a painting.
Mostly more an abstract sort of view that most people don't get.
Yeah, and that's one reason I love photographing abstract aerials, is because the landscape photography, I actually view them completely differently. The process is so different that the experience of photographing them is so totally different that feeds through to the processing and the output. And with abstract aerials, it is about the artistic nature of things. And I don't mind pushing the boundaries a lot further to make something beautiful and artistic, because I feel like that's what I'm bringing to it. And when I'm shooting aerials, it's so noisy, it's so busy, there's wind in your face, there's hair in your mouth, it's all, hectic. It's not the same experience as going out in nature and being open to the spirituality of it. It's a completely different experience. And therefore, I don't feel that...
Concentrate on keeping the drone in the air.
I don't use a drone.
Oh, no, okay.
No, all my aerials are with planes and helicopters.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
So the experience of it is just
more my kind of aerial then.
Yeah.
Because I don't own a drone at all.
I've never used a drone. I've never tried.
Nor have I. No interest.
Well, it's not that I have zero interest. It's more that I've had some negative experiences being in places when I've heard the sound of a drone.
I don't want to be that person either.
But flying, and most of my aerials are taken in places where there's no one around. Like, no one is going to be bothered by the sound of a helicopter where I'm shooting. So, I'm not inflicting that on anybody else. But yeah, these ladies, I'll go back to the story. These ladies came in and they were astounded at what they were seeing in nature. And, they could see figures and trees and all the rest of it. And that's what I love. That's what I really love. And I think we were talking and they were saying the reason they love art paintings more is because they respond more emotionally to those paintings.
Yeah.
And they were getting an emotional response to these aerials. And I just thought that's so cool. That's what every artist, regardless of your medium, is trying to do, I reckon. Is trying to elicit an emotional response from people.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk to me a bit about the aerials then, as we're on the topic. It's a little bit different, as you said, to getting the drone out and sticking that up in the air. So I'd imagine that requires a fair amount of planning and a fair amount of effort to organise to get to be flown over some of these remote locations. How much effort and work do you put into that, and how much is sort of planning versus shooting versus working through the process?
Well, the planning's really important because the majority of Australia is not worth photographing from there. Let's be honest. There's
good chunks of it that are pretty boring.
Boring. So it's not like you can just go. And I learned the hard way that you really do need to plan. I went on one shoot and it's a great learning experience because it's bloody expensive to do aerial photography. And if you don't
make too many mistakes in what you choose to do.
Yeah, if you choose to go a spot I chose to go a spot where I thought that there were geological formations, and it turned out that what I'd been viewing on Google Earth was actually vegetation. And in the air, the differences between the vegetation were very negligible, and I wasted a whole shoot. Like the only photos that I got from that shoot that were any good were actually there was an area that had dried out that was muddy, and there were animal tracks across it. So for a whole entire aerial shoot, that's all I came home with, and I was just that was a really good learning experience, because you really do need to do your research and you need to understand the height that you're looking at, because I use Google Earth to scope out areas. Obviously, like, Australia is so blessed with amazing aerial locations, and most of the best aerial locations have already been shot by somebody else.
Yeah, but you always get something unique. And
absolutely.
I think that's the beauty of some of those abstract. You can change altitude by 100 feet, and that same structure or same formation, rock formation, looks completely different. The shadows are different. The light on it is going to be different at different times of the day and different times of the year as well.
Absolutely. But truthfully, even with landscape photography, I don't mind photographing iconic locations because it's about the experience. Absolutely. And I've never seen it before. And if I'm there and I'm getting to see it, well, that's new and exciting. And I don't give a crap if 10,000 other people have a similar photograph. Right. I don't mind. That's all right. So I might post that and people might go, oh, another shot of the Wanaka tree. But you know what? I loved that experience. I loved being there. Like, for me, it was new and exciting. I don't have like everybody else's photos that I carry around in my head. I don't care. Like, I'm still going to approach it the same way. Absolutely. As if I'm discovering it, But going back to aerial photography, it is helpful if other people have photographed it first. And I would say that, for people just starting out with aerial photography, do go where other people have taken photographs so that you don't waste a whole aerial shoot photographing something that's very, very ordinary. But yeah, so I plan using Google Earth. What I tend to do is figure out where the closest airstrip is, try and find out who services that airstrip. I'll then send a flight. I'll email the flight company, send a proposed flight path, say, I want to shoot for around this amount of time. Usually it's about 90 minutes. Yep. Do you think we can cover this in that time? If these are the main points that I want to orbit. and then we'll take it from there. And usually, most of the places, if you say that you've done aerial photography before, they're very happy to take the doors off, and they understand. This is the key thing. They'll give you a pilot who understands that they need to position the aircraft so that you can shoot straight down. So most of my aerial photography isn't out and across. Like, I'm not shooting dunes that go on forever.
Not your airline window.
No. It's shooting straight down. So to shoot straight down, you need the aircraft to be, as perpendicular as possible. So that's really the important thing, is getting a pilot who knows how to do that and understands that. But then once that's all sorted and we're on the runway and I get excited, it's like all of that is gone, because the pilot has the flight path and I'm just going to shoot what I like seeing. And if it means that we don't get to all the places that I've got on my little flight path, doesn't matter. The important thing is that I'm shooting stuff that's cool. And that I love it.
So is there much communication with the pilot during the shoot? And
yes.
How does that work for you?
So I'm not very technical. So I'll just say, can we go a bit higher? Can we go a bit lower? Can we go around that again? I didn't get it. There's usually I'll fly between 10,000. Is that right? 10,000 feet.
Yeah, that's relatively low. It's about 10,000 feet is, how much is that in meters? It's about 3,000 meters.
Yeah. So numbers and me don't get along so well.
Okay.
I just go blank. I think it's 10,000 to 15,000 feet that I usually fly.
Okay.
But usually if you charter a helicopter, for example, they can fly as low as 500 meters.
Yep.
But the thing is, so the way that I set up my camera, I set it up with auto ISO sensitivity control. So I use aperture priority, I set my aperture, and then I set the parameters for the shutter speed and the ISO.
Yep.
And I shoot with fixed focal length lenses, manual focus lenses. And because they're not auto lenses, you can turn the focus ring until it doesn't go any further and it sticks on infinity.
Yep.
And so as long as I don't get too close to the ground, all my settings are taken care of.
Yeah, cool.
I literally don't even need to focus because I can just hold the focus ring as far as it'll go. And because I'm no good at numbers and because I'm not very technical, that just works for me. And I don't get blurry photos. So that's really handy. So in terms of talking to the pilot, it's nothing very technical. It's just, can we go back around that or whatever. The things that are good to be aware of is with a helicopter, you can go up and down really easily, but with a plane, they actually lose altitude as they go around. So you just have to keep that in mind. You can't ask pilots to do what they can't physically do with their aircraft. I made the mistake once. I was flying over Gutharaguda Shark Bay in Western Australia, and the pilot is a really cool young guy, and it was in a Cessna 172. So I'm just shooting through the window, and I made the mistake of telling him that I really wanted to fly in a helicopter, but there weren't any available. And so he gave me the most helicopter-like plane experience ever of my life. And oh my God, after 90 minutes, I was ready to puke. Yes, because he'd thrown the aircraft around. So, up on one side and then up on the other side. And my poor stomach was like, okay, this is not great. But the photos were amazing because he really positioned the plane so that I could shoot straight down. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. How would you define success in your photography?
That's a hard one. I would say that I have achieved success because I am talking to you on a podcast. I'm in a gallery. I kind of know what I'm doing with my camera, and people are purchasing prints from me and making their lives happy.
Sounds good to me. Let's talk a little bit about the gallery then. Obviously, are you now completely full-time? You're not working in anything else other than photography?
No, and that to me is like every day I wake up and make that realization and just go, oh my God, how did that even happen? I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet, I reckon. And to share that with Matt has made it even more fantastic because, starting a gallery, there's a lot of business decisions. And like I said, maths, technical stuff, that's not my forte. I'm much more of a just go with the moment kind of person. And teaming up with Matt, wow, he's got a head for all that stuff. And it's almost a year. So we opened December 11th last year.
Right.
We had talked about it a fair bit beforehand. The reason that I moved back to Bright from the Kimberley in 2018 was actually because I wanted to open a gallery. Matt was actually living in Queensland, and he was moving house, and he looked at places to live, and he actually considered Bright as a potential place to live. And he gave me a call years ago, this is ages ago, and said, how would you feel about another photographer living in the area? And I said to him, I have to be perfectly honest with you. I said, you can do whatever you want, just don't open a gallery. Because I just, like a lot of people love coming to Bright to photograph. It's a small town though. And there's really, like you really are cutting into each other's market a little bit if there's gallery, like two landscape galleries, for example.
Yeah.
I
get it.
You have your own style and your own differences, but if someone else opened a photography gallery in Bright before we did, I would feel that it wouldn't be the right thing to open another one.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want that to happen. I wanted to be the first. We opened the gallery. We talked a lot about it. We'd done a lot of planning, and then this travel agency, because of COVID, came up. Just the premises, not the business.
Yep.
We came in, we had a look, and we pretty much signed the lease.
Yeah.
Because it was perfect. It had big windows.
Yep.
People could view it from the outside. We could leave the lights on overnight, and people could see what was inside. And it's a dream come true, truthfully. Like, not many people get to say that their dreams come true in their lifetime.
Absolutely. So I'll take you back a little bit earlier than opening the gallery. Where did you make that lifestyle choice to say, okay, well, photography, that's what I want to do from now on?
So it was already when I was living in Broome and I was managing the library services for TAFE, it was already becoming a real stretch. So as I said, I had a really understanding boss, and she'd allowed me to reduce my hours so that 1 year I was working a 9-day fortnight, and then it was 4 days a week.
Yeah.
But it still was too much. I was exhausted all the time. Like, the market there is really busy, and it was just really hectic, and I was feeling very stretched. And then libraries everywhere are under a lot of pressure. I think people take a lot of what libraries do for granted, and they just don't realise how much libraries contribute and how talented librarians are at doing so many different things. And the WA state government was cutting costs, and my position was quite a well-paid position.
Mm-hmm.
And our institute, our TAFE, made an announcement that they were seeking voluntary redundancies. And it didn't even cross my mind to put my hand up for it. But one of my staff sat me down for a breakfast one day, and I thought we were just having a nice chat, and she busted out with, Mieke, you need to take this. And I was like, what? She said, I know that you're not thinking about it because of staff. She said, we will be fine. We have skills and qualifications. But you need to do this. She said, photography is your future. This is the best opportunity for you. And I was just blown away. Firstly, that someone would have enough of an interest in me and my future to like, that's a risk to, that's huge.
Absolutely.
So I was really honored that she would, like, she was probably my mum's age, someone who just had, and it was just, anyway, so I took it really to heart and I really had a good think about it, and made the decision. I put my hand up, they accepted it. I got basically a year's pay because I'd been working there for 5 years. And so at the end of 2017, I drove all the way from Broome down the coast across the Nullarbor and came to Bright and took the whole of 2018 to take photos, because at that stage my plan was to run workshops, and I didn't want to be that kind of workshop leader who wanted to take their own photos. And I figured if I take a year and just take lots and lots of photos and have them in the bag, then I'll be a much better workshop leader, and I'll just be able to support people the way, because I'm a teacher, so like I didn't want to be doing my own stuff. So that was great. So that was 2018. And then 2019, I was working on my business plan. 2020, I launched the workshops. 2 weeks in, COVID hit.
Wow.
And 9 workshops had to be cancelled. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do now? Like, this was what I'd been working towards. And but fortunately for me, people got on Zoom, and I ran all my workshops the same content that I would have for in-person workshops, and because I'm a teacher, I had planned PowerPoint presentations anyway.
Learning plans,
so in the end, I think it was over 40 Zoom workshops during COVID, which I've now made available as videos that people can access. But yeah, and then I met Matt, and then we opened the gallery. That's pretty much how it all happened.
One of the things a lot of photographers that are starting in, the business side of things, whether they're doing it as a side hustle or whether they're doing it full time, is how do you work out how to price your work? I'm not asking, well, you set the price at $3,000 for a print this big and that sort of thing. What I'm sort of saying is, how do you actually do that calculation, and how much work have you put into that thinking around how pricing works?
Yeah, it's really, really hard, and there's no easy answers. And there's people talk about rule of thumbs, and that's really handy when you're first starting out. They say, like, whatever it costs you to produce, multiply it by 3. But the truth is, like, your experience and that doesn't take into account any kind of difference in your talent, basically. But I think doing the market for a long time really helped. So when I first started doing the market, if I could make like $2, I was happy, because it was just a hobby on the side. When I was in Broome, I was selling prints, big A3 plus prints at $35, $40. Now I'm like, oh wow, that I thought that was a really good price, but the truth is the time that you spend going to these places, the petrol money, the printing, the inks, there's so many.
Once you add it all up, you start to go, okay, well, this is actually not a great return on investment.
No, and I guess I'm never critical of people who underprice their work, because the truth is most people don't know how to price their work. And, I think some professional photographers can get a bit grumpy. Like, I'm sure that there was a professional photographer in Broome who had a gallery. I'm sure he was dark on me for the prices that I had on my work. But the truth is I didn't know any better. And I would prefer, like, if I have to get up at 5:10 in the morning and I don't get home till 3:00 in the afternoon, I've spent the whole day talking to people, like, blah, blah. It's hard work. I would prefer to sell lots of stuff during that day than sell a couple of things.
Print,
so I priced things so that people could afford them. Because that makes it a much more exciting day for me than standing there and people looking at your prices and going, oh, I don't think I can quite afford that, But it's a really good question. And Matt and I spent a long time talking about the prices of our work, but also talking about editioning, whether we were going to do limited editions or open editions. And I'm really glad that we both had enough experience and knew enough about how it all worked to have meaningful conversation about it. In the end, we actually get a lot of comments. People say, oh my gosh, this is really affordable, which is great. We like that. We wanted to make sure that opening in a small town, we didn't put people offside. And that was more important to us than becoming rich and famous. I don't think our work is cheap. There's a lot of people who can't afford what we've got, but there's a lot more people who can. Yeah. And we try and have things at different price ranges so that anyone who comes in, at least they can walk away with a card.
Yeah.
And
I think that's an important thing, particularly if you're trying to open a gallery, is to have that range of product. It's not just, okay, well, here's the big, mega acrylic print that's 3 meters wide and 2 meters high.
Yeah.
You've got to, you want to sell them, sure.
And
put a premium price on those things. But you also want to be able to get that somebody that just wants to pay, $3 or $4 or $10 or whatever for a few cards and, have that image to take away with them.
I think we're constantly looking at it because actually the truth is prices are going up for everything. Prices are going up for the paper, the courier prices are going up. We have framed canvases. The price of the wood, even being able to source the frames is becoming more difficult. Our metal print supplier, or all of because there's so many people in the supply chain, you don't really realize it. But the end product is not just like we do our cotton rag printing up to a certain size. I do that, which was a wonderful learning experience.
Yeah. You've delved into the black arts of printing.
Oh, there's so much involved. I'm so glad that I started a long time ago and made a lot of mistakes back then, so that now I'm totally across it, because it's a whole, learning. It's just as involved as learning Photoshop.
Yeah.
Learning how to print is a whole extra complete field in and of itself. Color profiling, color management, it's just, yeah. So, so all of that is a factor, all the pricing of it's hard. I have no good advice.
I think you've given some hints anyway, and some ideas that people can sort of hang off and start looking at. But yeah, everyone I ask, nobody's come out and said, oh well, here's the formula I use, and it's just like A plus B equals C.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I think it's the most tricky because art is so subjective, and what you think about your work is not necessarily what anyone else thinks.
Markets have different price ranges as well. I mean, if you're in Sydney and you're trying to sell art, well, the market there is going to be different to somewhere like Bright.
Absolutely, and
the volume of people in itself is a factor.
Yes.
In, how much you may or may not be able to sell.
Yeah, and the difference in price, going back to Broome, when I had my market stall, it cost me, I think, $5 in the off season and $15 in the to have my stall. Compare that to, for example, I don't want to name names, but there's a well-established photographer in Bright who has a storefront. Real estate in Broome, is incredibly expensive. He's got to make a living, so he can't charge next to nothing for a print. Like all of those factors are, there's so many things to think about.
Yeah, it's not a simple
just
equation.
And it's not just what will someone pay for this? Matt is constantly saying, yeah, Mieke, you're not our target market. Just because you won't pay this, that is completely irrelevant. You know,
yeah, you've got to divorce yourself and your opinion of what it's worth and what you would pay for it.
Yep.
To what somebody else, you know, who has no idea about all of the hidden costs that may be there to actually extract some kind of value out of it, you know.
Yeah, and ultimately
the value is, you know, it might be a gift for somebody else, but the value of it is that it's going to be sitting on someone's wall, making them smile because they've got this beautiful image there.
Yeah, and ultimately you're walking the line between wanting lots of people to have your work and appreciate it, and also being able to make a living, because, you know, we want this to continue. We don't want to have to. We've just extended the lease for another 2 years. Yay, you know, but we've got to make that work. And there are times of the year that people don't come to Bright. Like, people think it's really busy in winter, for example, but actually what happens in winter is people are focused on skiing and they literally drive through Bright and go up the mountain.
Yep. So they're headed to Mount Buffalo and not
they're headed to Falls Creek and Mount Hotham, and they've spent a lot of money on their lift tickets, their resort entry fees, their accommodation, because everything's up the mountain, the expenses for food are a lot higher. They're not interested in hanging out down here.
Yeah.
Whereas autumn, summertime, you know, that's busy for us.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about Brighton in the local area and how that has changed how and what you're shooting now from where you were. You know, I mean, you're obviously still occasionally going out and doing your aerial stuff, but has living in Bright changed what you're shooting and how you shoot in any way?
It really changed how I shoot. I'm just very grateful. Like, when I grew up here, I didn't appreciate Bright. I thought it was boring as batshit. We nicknamed it Geriatricsville. It has changed a lot. Bright has changed a lot since I was a kid. So they put in a bike path where the railway line used to be. And so now it's a very active town. A lot of people come here for mountain biking, paragliding. It's, you know, there's a lot on offer. There's a lot of festivals now. We just had the Rod Run, which was, you know, amazing. All these, I'm not a huge fan, to be perfectly honest, but it was crazy to see how many people came here with all their cars. The Autumn Festival brings people from it. Like, it's a really busy town.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about Bright is we are nestled in the valley between Mount Buffalo, which is an hour away, Mount Hotham, which is an hour away, and Falls Creek, which is an hour away. And they all have their own different personalities. My favorite is Mount Buffalo because of what I talked about before, because of that spirituality. It's just a very intimate mountain. You can go there every day for a week and find new things to photograph. And next season it'll be completely different, because when there's fog, and that's the one thing that I appreciate that I really missed when I was up in the Kimberley, is fog. You know, that atmosphere is just so special. But yeah, Mount Hotham has great views out over the valleys. Falls Creek has these amazing old cattlemen's huts. So yeah, there's always more to explore. And, you know, even having grown up here, last week, actually it wasn't even last week, it was this week, I took a morning before work and went to a waterfall that I've been to lots and lots of times, Ladies Bath Falls, and walked up a little bit higher. And because of the epic volume of rain that we've had, there was another little cascade that usually isn't there.
Yeah.
And I photographed that. You know, that it's a place that's got so much on offer. The only time that it's boring is basically January, February, because it's blue skies.
Yeah, right.
But even then you'll get the occasional, you know, like the Kimberley is boring as anything for May, June, July, August, September, because it's the dry season and you don't see a cloud. Here at least there's none. Here at least, like, we do get an occasional storm come through or whatever, and you can go up and take photos. So yeah, it's always changing. I love that.
Have you got one particular favourite spot? Is it Mount Buffalo
Yep.
that it just keeps calling you back?
Yeah, it is. And I just feel like there's so much more that I haven't had a chance. Like there's a walk all the way from the base of Mount Buffalo to the top. It's called the Big Walk. I haven't done that since I was probably about 12.
Mm-hmm.
There's just lots. I just feel like you can probably never see everything there. And even if you have seen everything there, the weather changes and it's new again.
Yeah, fantastic. What's your most memorable experience in photography?
Oh, that's hard. There's a lot.
Good.
I'd have to say probably the one that springs to mind the strongest was the first time I did an aerial shoot, and that was actually on a workshop with Christian Fletcher. It was at Home Valley Station in the East Kimberley, and it was my first. They'd organised as part of the workshop an aerial shoot, and I just like my background when I was a kid, I loved gymnastics and skiing, and I did diving. Like I actually did a diving camp, and then later on I did surf boat rowing, and I actually did bobsleigh for a while. And then the first time I went up in a helicopter, I had that same adrenaline rush, that same you're just like and then flying out over the East Kimberley mudflats and seeing the tidal patterns of, like, they look like branches of trees. It was just incredible. So that was really the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I can combine my love of abstract with photography, but also with the thrill, the excitement that I missed so much from sport. So that was a big moment for me. And probably there's two others that I'll mention. Opening the gallery with Matt, that's huge. Massive, life-changing. And probably also winning the Pano Awards. So I was the first Aussie and first woman to ever win the Pano Awards. So that was epic. And that was just like, I didn't believe it. Like the organizer, David Evans, he rang me, and I was a bit naughty. I was driving along and I'd missed the call, and I hit play and I had to pull over. I was shaking so much. I was like, can this be real? Like I had been entering that competition for so many years and just trying to get one better than the last year. So it was very plodding kind of improvement process. And then when he rang, I was just like, so yeah, they're probably the big ones.
Fantastic. What about horror stories? Everyone has one.
Well, I think everyone has those moments where, like, you get a drowned camera at the beach, or you slip over and smack your lens, and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's just part of.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, I could describe it and I could, get all epic on you, but I think they pale in comparison to the joy, and you just have to, like, as long as you're not too badly injured. And I will tell one story, and I think it's indicative of the whole Kimberley experience.
Yep.
It was quite early on. I was living in Wyndham, and I'd come to Manning Gorge, which is this absolutely huge cascading waterfall. And I'd gone there before sunrise because I wanted to get a long exposure, and I had my 10-stop filter. And anyway, I couldn't go too early because of the travel time, and I wanted to get a different angle. I don't do this anymore, but I wanted something different to what I'd seen. And so I went off track.
Yep.
And I knew this was a really special spiritual spot, and I knew that I shouldn't be going off track, and I did it anyway. And then I tried to climb up on a ledge, and the weight of my backpack was too heavy, and I fell backwards and winded myself.
Ouch.
And I actually went, I knew that I shouldn't be doing this, and this is my karma. This is you being told that you're being a shit.
Yeah.
So don't.
You're doing things you shouldn't.
Yeah. And I took it that way. So, that's not how it always is. Like, I've done stupid stuff that's totally my fault, is not nature's fault whatsoever. But yeah. How about you? What have you? I'm sure you've told your horror stories.
Yeah, a couple of times. Mostly, usually it's being hit by a wave that comes up and swamps the camera. And I've had the Canon 6D Mark II now for quite some years now. It's been in the shop twice and had its innards
replaced.
Simply because of corrosion and
salt. Oh, that's the killer, isn't it? Yeah. It looks okay from the outside. It doesn't work. You send it in, they show you a photo, and it's just all eaten.
There's not much capability for it to transmit electric signals.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
So yeah, that's mostly what I've had. Luckily, I haven't had any real physically dangerous things like falling over. My wife actually, we were in the UK the last trip there. I thought she'd broken her neck. We were walking back from a waterfall that we'd walked sort of 2.5 hours into the Lake District up the side of this mountain. And, I snapped away, did all of that. We were packing up on our way home, and my wife put her left foot down, and it was sort of like quite a steep hill we were on with quite a narrow track. But she put her foot down, and obviously it just kept going down the hill, and so she went down head over heels and landed in this little she dropped probably about 5 or 6 meters, but she dropped into this little sort of crevice thing in amongst these rocks next to the stream, and I was sort of trying to scramble down there as quick. I was behind her at the time and trying to scramble down there, screaming at her not to move, but she got up swearing, so I knew she was fine.
Oh. But, that makes the heart go, doesn't it? Yep.
I still have PTSD about it sometimes. But she actually cracked a couple of ribs, so she wasn't completely uninjured. But she.
You really need to be like. I know it sounds really obvious, but you have to be so careful. Yep. I was in the Sahara Desert in Morocco, and I was so excited to be in the Sahara Desert that I literally just lost track of where I was. And the sun came up and it was just magic, and I was taking photos, and then the sun, when the golden light just ends and it's just ordinary light.
You just daylight.
Yeah, and you just know it's time to go. And then I realized I have no idea what direction I'm supposed to go back in. And it was a real moment, that really sickening feeling like I've just made a really bad mistake.
And by that time in the Sahara as well, the temps are starting to get
and I was really worried that I was going to be that lady on the news, the Aussie that died in the desert because she didn't have enough water. Yeah. But fortunately for me, the night before it had rained a little, which is so unusual. And there were areas where I could see my footprints, and I just could follow my footprints back. But it was a real reminder that you're not safe. Like you have to be aware that nature is far more powerful than you, and you've got to be aware. Yeah.
Speaking of, I guess strong forces and that, have you ever hit a creative wall? And if so, how did you deal with it?
That's a really interesting question. I don't feel like I've really hit a period of longer than a few days where I lose my creativity altogether.
Yep.
But social media for me is a really good litmus test of my mental place. Usually I really enjoy looking at other people's photos, and I don't have a lot of free time, so I don't tend to comment, but I like a lot of people's photos. But if I ever go on and I see someone's photo and I feel jealous, then I know I'm not in a good place mentally.
Yeah.
And instantly I go, okay, what do I need to do to fix this? And usually it's turning everything on, like turn my phone on airplane mode so no one can contact me, and so I can't go on and check anything. And I just go and do something to restore my, fill up my reservoirs, I guess. And even if it's just, watching a movie or like something that takes me away from where I am right now, or, going out for a drive or something like that. It happens to all of us for sure, but I have to acknowledge that the only times that I've ever really hit a big chunk, and it's probably only one, and that was because of completely external factors, like my family was going through some stuff and photography just wasn't a priority during that time. Yeah. But apart from that, no, I think I'm just good at, maybe I'm sounding a bit arrogant, but I think I'm really good at reading when I'm in that, heading for that space. And as I said, social media, because usually I'm so supportive of everybody. And if I get that little stab of jealousy, if that green-eyed monster rears its head, I'm like, okay, you're not in a good spot. You need to do something about this. Go.
That's a really good litmus test. And I think it's a great skill to learn, because it is a skill you can learn. I've certainly learned it myself over time, to recognise when the mental strain that you're putting yourself under, because that's largely what it is. Nobody's forcing you to think a certain way.
No.
Recognising that it's you that's doing it, and it's you that can actually change the way that you think about things.
You're exactly right. And I think for me, there are times when I feel like I need to process, and the more I feel I need to process, the less I want to process.
Yep.
And so I just let myself off the hook, because I don't have deadlines. That's the beauty of this whole thing. I don't have deadlines, and there are so many other things that I can do rather than processing. It's usually the processing that gives me the block. Anytime I'm happy to go and take photos, like that's always, fun. But the processing can be a bit of a drag sometimes.
Fair enough. What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photography right now?
Can I flip that and say one of the beautiful things firstly?
Yeah, sure.
So I think a lot of people, I get comments about this. So I know that it's not just a couple of people who say this, but, everyone thinks they're a photographer. I actually think it's wonderful that we can share that experience with so many other people, and that we can talk. Yeah, I just think that's wonderful. So I'm going to say that out there first. But yes, because there are so many people who are doing photography, I'm sure, pretty much everyone that you interview probably says the same thing, but it's that there are certain places that can't handle the volume of people.
Yeah.
And I am very open with places. Like, I will happily tell people everywhere that I photograph, where I took photos, provided that I know that the infrastructure or the paths or, whatever can support the volume of people. If ever I'm cagey about where I photographed, it's either A, because it's a specific photographic shoot that I did with one person that I promised that I wouldn't tell, or B, it's because of this particular thing that I have concerns about the sensitivity of the place. And particularly up in the Kimberley, I got permission to go to certain places. It's slightly different because it's not about the volume of people, but I got permission to go to places. And I know that a lot of people wouldn't take the time to find out who they needed to ask permission for. And a lot of the time, let's be honest, it's really difficult to get in touch with Indigenous people to get the right permissions. So there are certain places that I won't say exactly where it is, simply because I know that most people are not going to make the effort to get permission to go there. I think the beauty is that, so many of us now can afford to travel. We have cameras. it's amazing that we're rich by world standards. If we have a camera, we're rich, you know, like we're so lucky to be able to do this amazing thing. But yeah, it comes with a price tag, and the price tag is the environment. And because I love the environment, like that is of concern.
Definitely. What do you see the future of photography holds?
Oh, this is an interesting one. So if anyone likes looking at YouTube stuff, Matt has a YouTube channel called Matt Makes Photos, I think it is. Okay. And he's been deep diving into AI, which is really interesting. And I think for me, that's kind of solidified where I stand in terms of photography. I think photography is just going to keep branching out, and you're going to be able to do more and more stuff, and that's very exciting and all the rest of it. But I think people they already are really interested in whether this is real or whether this is something that's not. And I think knowing where you sit on that spectrum and being honest about it is really important. And I think more and more people,
I think it's crucial.
Yeah, and there's no fear, I think, about what you create and all the rest of it. I think at the end of the day, it's your own personal honesty that people will care about. Yeah. And, you know, like I actually really look forward to when I get old, because what I plan to do is a lot more creative Photoshop stuff, because, you know, ultimately I love art, and if I can't go places anymore, I want to create places, and I'm looking forward to that. But that's not what I do now. And the reason that I don't do it now is because I want people to know when they look at a photo that's by me, that it's real and that it's nature, and that, you know, the beauty of it is not created by me. The beauty of it is created by nature.
All right. Well, we're probably nearing the end of our time together, so I'm going to ask if you've got any other photographers that you think I should be talking to. Let me know who else to put on my list.
Well, I've got a few. So firstly, obviously, I think it'd be awesome to talk to Matt, because he's the other side of this equation. And he does have his own, he's very different to me. So it certainly will not be a similar conversation. But his work is amazing. And what I really appreciate about his photography is he's got a design background. And so he notices stuff that I just don't. And he's got a quirky eye that's really, you know, so yeah, I would definitely say have a chat with Matt. He's also had such a wealth of experience in so many other genres. So he's got a very different background to me. Another photographer who does more creative photography, but I know she loves landscape photography, and I've got some of her work. Lucky me. Kath Salia. She's an amateur photographer, but her work is absolutely exquisite. It's definitely professional level. It's amazing, mind-blowing stuff. So I think having a chat to her, I don't know if she does stuff like this, but worth the question.
I can but ask.
You can but ask. Chris Saunders, who on Instagram is 645 Imaging. Yep. His aerials are just next level. His workflow is so different to mine. We actually went on a trip recently, and I learned a lot more about how he approaches photography. And, you know, you kind of get lulled into the sense that a lot of people think just like you. And we actually approach things really differently. But he is a very technical minded person, and for him processing is a big part of his photography, and his work is just absolutely mind-blowingly exquisite. So definitely Chris Saunders. And on that same trip, I got to learn a bit more about Ricardo da Cunha, and he is a conceptual artist and just a beautiful person, and his work is just so thoughtful and polished and just really, exquisite work. Definitely him. Tanya Malkin, who I have done a lot of shooting with. She was living in Kununurra when I was living in Broome. Her aerial work is amazing. She, you know, does a lot of stitching, so her work can be, you know, she's exhibited in China. She's she's TM Art Photo on Instagram.
Okay.
And finally, I reckon you should interview Christian Fletcher if he'll say yes, because he does a podcast, but he's usually on the interviewing side. He's.
Oh, I've listened to Christian for quite a few years now, and he and I had a bit of a conversation via email on a couple of things before I started the podcast. But I did actually send him
good.
A request, but I haven't heard back from him. So.
Oh, well, bother him again, because I'd love to see the shoe on the other foot. Like he was a huge inspiration for me when I first started out with photography. My first workshop was with Christian Fletcher, Tony Hewitt, and Peter Eastway, and I didn't know who any of them were.
Oh, wow.
And
all legends.
I know, and I was so embarrassed. Like, I got them mixed up and everything. It was so funny. Like, I was green as a grasshopper, and all the other photographers on this workshop were actually really good, and I was not. I actually showed up with my whole entire computer, like my desktop computer, the monitor and the hard drive, at Karajini National Park in the middle of nowhere, because I couldn't get hold of a laptop. So yeah, they remember me very well. But yeah, Christian's he's just such a down-to-earth guy who's just been in the industry for so long, and he's still got the passion and still excited about it. So yeah, so they're my recommendations. I know they're a lot, but there's so many great photographers.
I will never run out of people to talk to. I'll get bored of doing the podcast and all the associated bits and bobs that I do in the background that nobody sees before I run out of people to talk to.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't see myself giving up for some time.
Good. I've been enjoying your podcast, and I've only scratched the surface. So unfortunately, I only discovered your podcast after COVID, and before COVID, I was doing a lot of traveling, so I was listening to a lot of stuff. But I haven't been doing much traveling lately. So, and I'm not someone who can listen and do at the same time.
Yeah, I struggle with that as well. Unless it's processing, and I know I don't have to think about it. And I know what my workflow for that shot or set of shots is going to be, and I just go bang, bang, bang. I'm
exactly the same as you. Whereas Matt, he can have like an actual presentation going on one screen, and he's I can't. I'm a very focused.
I podcast when I'm driving, or if I'm mowing the lawn, or
when you don't have to, when you can actually engage and listen, and anyway, exactly.
All right, it's been wonderful having a chat to you. I've got one more question, and it's probably the most important question that we've got to get to the bottom of. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
And I have a very disappointing answer. I really don't give a rat's. If it's on, I'll eat it.
Neither do I.
Not, I won't. Like, it doesn't bother me.
Neither do I. That's why I ask it, because I'm very neutral on the subject. If it's there, I'll eat it. If it's not there, I won't bother.
Yeah, I have to say, a burger with the lot, I'd prefer it without.
Absolutely.
But yeah, pizza doesn't matter.
No, pineapple's got to be on a burger with the lot. But I'm
the opposite.
You're the opposite.
No, I love my beetroot, egg, bacon, the whole lot, but not pineapple.
Pineapple just adds that little.
No, it's overpowering. It's too much.
No, can't agree with you there, man. All right. Well, thank you ever so much. It's been wonderful spending some time with you and getting to know you and your work a little bit better and how you do what you do. Where can people find your work other than the gallery in Bright?
Yeah, thank you. Definitely come to the gallery because it's nice to have a chat. On socials, we've got the two accounts. The gallery one is Alpine Light Photography, both on Instagram and Facebook. And my personal account is Mieke Boynton Photography on both Instagram and Facebook.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure, Grant. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.